Our next speaker, Marc Smith, for many, many years was at Microsoft Research doing some very cutting-edge work on how people, even before we had Web 2.0 and the World Wide Web, how people were interacting with each other in networked ways on Usenet groups. He left Microsoft recently. He now is the chief social scientist at a firm called Connected Action. And they've developed a really cool tool for visualizing networks of people around ideas, around news moments. And what he's going to talk to us about and actually show us some examples of is how we can begin to see what networked leadership might look like. What is leadership when you get past the celebrity form of one to many, where many may be linked to many. So I'm looking forward to a very interesting talk from Marc Smith. Come on up.
Good morning. Hi, New York, and it's good to be at PdF. It's my first time. I'm Marc. I'm a sociologist, and my interest is in mapping social media. There's an enormous amount of social media out there. People are talking about every topic you can think of, and when they talk to each other, they form linkages. They're forming connections, and they're forming collections of connections. If I can show you some pictures, let's see. When we get together and we protest or we rally or we support a cause, the groupings that are present there can often be seen. People gather under a sign. Today, when we gather in front of a candidate, that similarly, you can see the size of the crowd, the shape of the crowd, how it's gathered together. But in Twitter, we're just a line of photos and recent tweets. It's the arrangement by reverse chronological order, and we don't really see the structure of the community. We have built, and we is a group of social scientists, computer scientists, and others who have now formed a social media research foundation, call it the NodeXL Support Group. We've created a tool, NodeXL, the Network Overview Discovery and Exploration add-in for Excel. It's an acronym and it can't be trademarked. NodeXL is a plugin for Excel, and it lets you do social network analysis. It lets you do social network analysis of social media. And what that means is if you can make a pie chart, you may now make a network diagram. It is that easy. And so what we have done is try to create a tool for getting to the insights that are available from social network analysis. If you're familiar with the three most important things in real estate, that would be location, location, location. The three most important things in network theory are position, position, position. Where in the graph are you? The graph is not a linear list of the most recently tweeted topics on a particular political or social issue. It's a set of people who have different connections to one another. And so social network theory, a fairly obscure topic in the social sciences, born in 1934 here in the great city of New York by Jacob Moreno at NYU, later developed over the last 80 years into a very powerful technique, one that actually drives our economy. After all, what is PageRank but an application of eigenvector centrality? And if you say eigenvector centrality later today, I guarantee you will be funded. Network theory says we are not just isolate bubbles, we're not just circles, we're circles with lines, and sometimes we're circles with lines that can be encased in a bigger circle. And in doing so, we gain some insights into the structure and shape of communities forming on the web. These notion of centralities, the idea that you could be a leader in different senses, that we actually have a mathematical model for leadership. We can measure your leadership by how close to the center or other strategic locations you are. We've been doing a lot of work in mapping political discussions, and what we find is that people lay down different patterns of connections. And these different patterns of connections tell us about the role you play. What kind of role? Are you the expert? Are you the answer person? Are you the topic setter, the agenda setter who, when introducing a topic for discussion, actually gets other people to talk about it? Or are you the person who talks about the topic that's been introduced by others? We've explored this in the realm of political discussion, where we find that people pursue people of the opposite party in order to beat them senseless, and that's what they like doing in online discussions, at least as we found in Usenet newsgroups. Recently, we found that very few people set the agenda in discussion forums. These are the discussion catalysts, the topic starters, the agenda setters, something that suggests that the hope that a democratization of political topic generation would happen, it has still fallen into the hands of a very, very small minority. So NodeXL, the Network Overview, Discovery, and Exploration add-in for Excel, available on CodePlex. If you've got Office, you can plug it in. It's free and open. It's free as in speech, free as in beer, and free as in bird. It is a product of a group of people who have come together from a number of universities: Cornell, the University of Porto, Stanford University, the Oxford Internet Institute, and notably the University of Maryland and Microsoft Research, and we are generously funded by Microsoft now for several years. Our goal is to support this project and support the idea of creating open tools, open data, and open scholarship to improve our understanding of social media. In essence, we would like to make scanning, tunneling, electron microscopes free at every library near you. Many will be misused, some will cause great insights into social media. And what we want you to be able to see is that different positions in the graph actually have different qualities of strategic value, that just being the person with the most connections is not necessarily the most strategic position. And there you see Heather, not that well connected, but strategically connected, and there is Diane at the center of the graph. If Diane leaves the room, frankly, everybody can still talk to everybody else. And so we have generated a book about this with my co-authors Ben Schneiderman and Derek Hansen at the University of Maryland. It's coming out soon. That follows on this great bestseller. And what we have done is made it possible for anybody, and we do mean anybody, we mean the non-algorithmic population of the planet, which is to say that 99.99% of us who, have been told, well, you could learn to code. I could learn to play the saxophone as well, but it's not going to happen. We make it possible for you to go into the NodeXL menu, go to data import from Twitter, from Flickr, from YouTube, from the web, from your email, perhaps from somebody else's email. You should be careful with that. With a subpoena, it seems reasonable. And when you do that, you get maps of how people connect to people. And this is a couple of weeks back. This is everybody who had at that point mentioned PdF 2010. And we can start to see structure. It's not that everybody's connected to everybody equally. There's some structure in there. Some people are more central than others. Molly, you're very central. And of course, Micha, you're very central. But then time marched on, and this is yesterday, and the graph got denser. And we can start to measure this. We can measure the density, we can measure the connectivity, and we can notice that some people are big, that means they have a lot of followers. Some people are smaller, they have fewer followers, but it's possible to be much smaller, have fewer followers, and occupy a strategic location. And so a recent paper down in DC at a conference, the ICWSM, the well-named International Conference on Weblogs and Social Media, they had a great paper called The Million Follower Fallacy, in which they noted that it's not how many, it's how far your tweets get retweeted. It's the propagation power of a person in a network that really defines their influence. And if you're chasing followers, what you really want to do is find followers who think what you say is so important that they will say it again. So we have the ability now to press a few buttons with 0 lines of code. You can create a graph for any topic you can think of. And this is a topic I could think of. This is TCOT. And TCOT is, as you know, top conservatives on Twitter. And it has a shape. And its shape is slightly different from other kinds of crowds in cyberspace. Different, well, for one thing, there are very few people at the bottom there. Those are isolates. It's very rare that you will say TCOT and not be connected to somebody else who already says TCOT. This is Tea Party. And Tea Party has, again, very few people who are casual, a very large, dense graph of highly cohesively connected people with a lot of followers. And then you can see over on the side there a kind of anemic, sparse graph of people who do say Tea Party, but they're actually the Tea Party skeptics. They are critical of Tea Party. And they are small in number and few in connections and not well followed. This is the global warming graph, a topical discussion, but one with two clusters, the one up at the top and the one at the bottom. The one up at the top are people who have not gotten the memo yet that we're not going to say global warming anymore. What we really have, we got caught with the, well, it's cold at my house problem. What we're really saying is, well, the preferred term is climate change. I like the term global weirding. It's not that it's getting warmer, it's just getting weirder. The hots are hotter, the colds are colder, the wets are wetter, the dries are drier. But at the bottom, that cluster are global warming deniers. And in fact, here you see somebody saying, when the next ice age begins, the tofu eaters will still be talking about global warming, laugh out loud. That's a cluster of people who are deniers, and we can see that the debate has shifted, and this is the debate on climate change. This is people saying the word climate change, and it's dominated by major news outlets and the people who hang off of them retweeting their stories. So, if you're interested in this, there is a video on YouTube. My colleague Eduarda Mendez-Rodriguez from the University of Porto will walk you through what I think is a really interesting example data set, and you can download this from our website. And that data set is the 2007 United States Senate voting records. A stack of data, if you'd gotten it on paper, that would probably be taller than the tallest person in the room, which we distilled down with the help of the nice people at Slate who generated this data set. We've imported it into Node Excel. What you get is a dot for every senator. A line exists between every senator and any other senator that they vote in agreement with more than 65% of the time. It turns out the average amount of agreement is about 35% of the time. It means that about 35% of the bills out there are so non-controversial that we can all agree. Resolved, puppies are cute. Yes. If you ramp up the threshold, and we have a little slider, and it's a threshold, and it says any data you have in your spreadsheet, that could be a filter. We call it dynamic filters. You pull the filter up above 65%, two clusters emerge, East Coast and West Coast. No, you get right wing and left wing. And what you should note, even if you're not network theorists, is, wow, what are the three dots in the middle? We call that betweenness. And that's Spector, Snow, and Collins. But this is 2007. This is not 2009, this is 2007. And so Spector, Snow, and Collins in some ways predict the future here in this network graph. They show us that, after all, they were the only three to vote with the stimulus. Now, of course, what this highlights is that being in the center, being between, is not necessarily the best thing for you. Being between may mean that you have arrows in your back from both sides. But betweenness is a notion of centrality and one that you could calculate with a mouse click now. This is the discussion about oil spill. Notice all the people at the bottom. They are not connected to somebody else who says oil spill. That's an opportunity for organization. These are people who are talking about it but haven't connected yet. If you're targeting people, maybe you want to find them. This is a few weeks prior. It was a lot less dense, and it's growing. This is the discussion around BP. And if you wanted to find out who is talking about BP and has a prominent position in the network, calculating this graph might be a useful thing. So this is the OpenGov discussion. People out there talking about getting data out in hopefully XML formats that we can consume in a machine-readable way. And you can find the prominent people in this graph. And using the spreadsheet, you can even sort them. So if you say, well, wait a second, is it that person or that person? You pull this aside. We do recommend a second LCD monitor. Get both side by side. And you can sort them by their various centrality scores. Here, the solar discussion, not nearly as dense, needs a lot of help. People need to add their voices to the solar discussion, and so on. We are offering this tool for all sorts of topics. You can put it and point it at Twitter, at YouTube, at Flickr, at Delicious, at your email, and so on. And in doing so, you gain insight into the shape of the graph for any topic. This one, wellness, a topic related to the healthcare debate. Here, a topic for government agencies. This is the graph for people who mention NSF. And who's prominent in that that graph? Well, that would be the NSF account, which is fine. But what we're interested in is finding those voices that are not part of that agency who are also prominent, and you can see them in the graph. This is the Smithsonian, very well retweeted, but really the center of its world and not yet generating independent discussions separate from that. So I'll just leave you with a piece of work that was done by Scott Golder and Vladimir Barish at Cornell University using NodeXL. They looked at Sestak and Spector's Twitter graph on the day of the election, and then they clustered it. And one of the interesting findings they found is that, first of all, the yellow block is Mr. Sestak. And there is no such block in Mr. Spector's graph. He didn't tweet, apparently. The shape of these graphs suggests that attracting certain constituencies, subclusters, can in fact predict, well, in this case, a victory at the polls. Doing this for more elections seems to be an interesting direction for research, and we at the Social Media Research Foundation would love to support your research as soon as we're supported ourselves. So, there you go. I'm in a little bit of social media, and you can find me on the web. And there you go, the many, many fine contributors to the NodeXL project and the Social Media Research Foundation. Thank you so much.